Hello, everyone. It's Danny Flexen here with Ayman Khan. The original lineup is back together, like, I don't know, vintage sugar babes, I guess, although there's only two of us. And loads of other reasons why we're very different, I'm sure. But we're here for SO Live. Please do give us a thumbs up and a subscribe if you haven't already. Get ready with your questions and your comments. We're going to be talking predominantly about the 5 versus 5 mega event, which isn't even the main event of the June the 1st show, but we'll get into all of that shortly. Ayman Khan, how are you?
I'm great. Sugar Babes more like sweaty granddads. That's about what came into my head right now, especially off of the back of the workout. But looking forward to jumping into all of the topics, all of the contributions as well from you in the chat. If you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe button, get those comments in. We've got a lot for you, especially off the back of a big Sunday night with the announcement of the 5 versus 5 Matchroom versus Queensberry shows. What weights confirmed now? What fights we're waiting to see what they are.
And before we get cracking with all of that, we want to get the poll out nice and early this week, so you've got plenty of time to vote and get your views in. And it's a very simple binary choice here this week. Who's going to win overall the 5 versus 5 part of that June the 1st event? Frank Warren and, by virtue, Queensberry Promotions, or Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing? Let us know who you think is going to come out on top. For people who don't know, it's 5 fights. The promoters picked 2 weight divisions each, with Turkey Al Sheikh, who's the man bankrolling the whole thing. Thank you, Turkey. HE, as the kids are calling him. He gets to pick 1 division as well. Warren went for middleweight and heavyweight, and 2 divisions in which he is particularly strong. I think most people would agree. Whereas Eddie Hearn went for featherweight and light heavyweight. And Turkey Al Sheikh, and we talked about this when we did breaking news yesterday, picked heavyweight as well. We didn't know this was an option. We thought it'd be 5 different weight divisions. But apparently the wild card round, which is the one Turkey Al Sheikh has control. I mean, he controls all of it, but you know what I mean, is another heavyweight clash, which makes the speculated fights that have been talked about more likely. Because as we know, Deontay Wilder and Filip Hrgović at time of broadcasting are not currently with Matchroom. But in the wildcard event, as Frank Warren confirmed to me this afternoon, you don't have to be contracted to Queensberry or Matchroom. So we'd expect that to be a battle of free agents, if you like, or maybe one of Warren's fighters, because he said he doesn't need the wild card option. One of Warren's fighters against a Hearn, what do we say, a soldier of fortune, like a bounty hunter, someone who's just come in for that one event. Eamon, what do you make of it all? We talked about this a lot on breaking news yesterday, but considering the main event is an undisputed title clash between 2 pound-for-pound top 10 contenders, to have this level of fight that's being speculated seems too good to be true.
It does seem too good to be true. And when you're in that state with boxing, looking forward to something, you know that something can always fall by the wayside just so quickly as it is promised. So, I'm hoping everything that in prospect of the fights that we're kind of dreaming up of do make their way over the line for the night. But we kind of said a lot about it in that yesterday, where we got that excitement of the level, and it's very much unprecedented in these times, like of the caliber of fights. And there's that phrase that goes out quite a lot, which frustrates me when you hear it, because when a promoter says it, most of the time they're embellishing to the nth degree, and that's they say stacked card. This night it's a stacked card.
I got it.
There you go. That's right. Well, this one seems to be in prospect a stacked card where you can use that actual phrase. And I think the last time I can remember off the top of my head of a card that resonates to that degree was when DAZN were first coming out and trying to establish themselves in the UK. That Smith versus Fowler card was a real good card. And it's very seldom that we get cards of that caliber. And this seems to blow that out of the water. It is a shame that rewind, in a sense, a few years back when Frank Warren put this out during the coronavirus period. The 5v5. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Those machinations of the 5v5 were never materialized. And let's be real about it. It's because it's been bankrolled by someone who has the funds to make the fights. It is a shame that it's got to that point to get the fights. However, putting that aside, it is great that those fights are being made now finally. And hopefully also as well, what we've got to make sure too is that the 5 versus 5 is great, Queensberry versus Matchroom, but the fighters don't get lost in the pot, in the shuffle, and they come out spotlighted just as much as the 2 companies going to war, as it were.
Yeah, well, that's what Warren was saying earlier. Like, oh yeah, it's a battle of egos, and no one's going to want to lose. And I was like, whose egos though? Surely it's yours and Eddie's egos. And he was like, yeah, I'm not absolving myself from that. I thought, well, yeah, you're going to have the biggest ego out of everyone, you and Eddie. That's what most people are caring about, I think, at the moment. But he did point out, whoever's on that 5 team, if you like, aren't going to want to let their teammates down. They're not going to be the one who loses for Queensberry. Warren seems very confident as well. I said to him when Eddie picked his 2 divisions, were you kind of licking your lips? Did he make a mistake? And he said, yeah, both of them. He said, we're very strong in both light heavyweight and featherweight. And he seemed to be, he didn't say it outright, but he seemed to feel like he could get a clean sweep here. He could win 5-0. DB Cooper 1 says, the card concept is just wild. Imagine being a fighter who lets the stable down. Big up the excellent turkey, Wembley in September. Get me some of that. Yeah, I think we'll probably talk about the Wembley possibilities on another episode. But yeah, Turkey Al Sheikh has clearly transformed boxing in the UK as much as anywhere else. And yeah, the fact that it's on the undercard, as I keep saying, of Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev, which is a main event anywhere you like, it's just crazy. But yeah, so going through the card, start at the top. We're going to have 2 heavyweight fights now. What's been speculated over the last week or so, and Warren insists nothing's been signed and sealed yet, but has been Deontay Wilder against Zhilei Zhang. Obviously, Zhilei Zhang is with Queensberry. Deontay Wilder, as far as we're aware, a free agent currently. And the other one was Daniel Dubois, who we saw most recently getting past Jarrell Miller in impressive fashion. He's another Queensberry fighter, going up possibly against the IBF #1 contender and perhaps championship opportunity in waiting for the winner, Filip Hrgović, who again is not with Matchroom. So, as Frank Warren explained, you can only have one wild card, and that's for one of the 2 heavyweight fights. Eddie Hearn will presumably pick one of those 2 if these fights go ahead. Would he have to sign the other one? I guess he would to a Matchroom contract, however short term that might be with all this transfer window stuff going on. But Warren was just he said it kind of undermines the whole concept if, Hearn fills his stable with a bunch of ringers, a bunch of bounty hunters only in it for that one night. Do you know what I mean? So hired guns, if you like. So we'll have to wait and see how that all pans out. But if they are the 2 heavyweight fights, Eamon, what do you make of those 2?
Yeah, look, Dubois versus Hrgović, start off with that one. Dubois really confident right now for the back of the win over Jarrell Miller. It depends who you speak to as to where I kind of lie on this, because I had a couple of people kind of say that with Dubois' confidence skyrocketed, as it were, against Jarrell Miller, and the doubts that maybe he had about when the going gets tough, will he get going? He kind of proved that to some degree against Miller, because he was really on the back foot parts of that fight. It looked like he was going to gas until he found his second win to really sail him through to the victory at the end. And some people say that, look, now's the time. Once you're up here, go for those bigger fights. And Hrgović, whilst he's a threat, you could probably come up through that fight, through that test. And then the other side of the coin is some people saying, when I look at Hrgović, I see him as quite a big threat, but other trainers, the like of Kevin Barry, kind of see him as someone who's been maneuvered into a position quite well and isn't really the package that we're being delivered to and talked to about when it comes to Filip Hrgović, who has faltered for many people in their own eyes. I saw it with my own eyes myself when he fought Zhilei Zhang on the Usyk versus Joshua 2 card. Very lucky to come away with a decision on that night, on that fight. Will he come through Daniel Dubois? Maybe that's the step that they're willing to take, the risk reward for Dubois with the mandatory position on the line there. And why would Filip Hrgović want to sacrifice that as well too, which is a very interesting part of the equation as well, for the winner to then have another fight against Joshua to then claim the belt, as it were. Very, very, very strange point there, waiting to see what the decision is there. And moving forward with Wilder versus Zhang, look, Zhang coming off the back of the defeat to Joe Parker will feel aggrieved, but has a lot to answer for the second half of his performance against Joe Parker, where he didn't do all that much himself. So jumping straight in and looking to rectify and keeping his name in people's mouths and people's minds, it's probably what's best for Zhilei Zhang, who will probably see the opportunity of Deontay Wilder, who doesn't look to the best of his form right now, is looking for some activity himself. In prospect, 2 big bangers in Wilder and Zhang. Zhang's bang probably fizzles out after the 6th. Wilder's carries through all the way to the 12th. One man is likely to go down. We just don't want that to be a dud fight. So in prospect, it seems to be two really good fights. Just whether, as well, the caveat with Wilder versus Zhang too, which I'm not fully sold on either, is the idea of Deontay Wilder signing with Eddie Hearn after all those years and back and forths and discussions and negotiations between the two to get Wilder versus Joshua. Now he's happy to trust Eddie Hearn, not to say that he can't trust Eddie Hearn, but to shake those hands and be and represent Matchroom after all that. I'm not sure what's happened there. Something must have been smoothed over behind the scenes for that to happen. But until that kind of gets formally announced and we see Wilder representing Matchroom, I'm not sold on it just yet.
Yeah, I mean, would it be holding hands or shaking hands? I'm not sure, given what it's been like in recent times. But I imagine Wilder, not just because of his name, would be the wild card in this scenario, and he would be signing his deal directly with Turki Al-Sheikh to fight Zhilei Zhang. But maybe the one who signs with Matchroom for however short-term a deal it is would be Hrgović, who's obviously worked with them before. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think DB Cooper mentioned in the chat, I won't read the full chat, but mentioned the existence of a captain for each team, and they get double points if they win their fight. And he was saying about, it looks like Frank's going to choose Dubois. I wouldn't do that. I probably wouldn't either if the projected card lines up as we kind of expect it to. I think Dubois against Hrgović is kind of a 55-45 fight in favour of Hrgović. It's not, I'm not picking just yet who's going to win, but I certainly wouldn't make him my captain. You do fantasy football, you have your triple captain, don't you? And you always pick your best striker who's playing at home against the weakest opposition. So, Erling Haaland's at home against Luton or Burnley, probably a better example this year. That's who you go as your triple captain. You want someone who's got the odds massively in their favour if, you're getting double points for it. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't pick Dubois in this scenario if it is Hrgović he's fighting. But yeah, I mean, it's hard for Eddie Hearn on the heavyweight side because if he doesn't, sign up Hrgović and use Wilder as a wild card, who does he have in the heavyweight division that's in and around world level except for Joshua? And we don't expect Joshua to be part of this card despite his kind of low-key trolling online. He's not going to stick Johnny Fisher in with a, Zhilei Zhang, is he, or a Daniel Dubois at this stage. So who else is there? It's a tough one unless he kind of re-signs Dillian Whyte. Perhaps that could be done. It's an interesting way of Dillian Whyte getting right back in the mix. But I don't think those two fights that have been talked about would have been whoever leaked it, whoever's the mole. I don't think it matters in the fact that people wouldn't be talking about it from nowhere. There's no smoke without fire. And I imagine they will be the two heavyweight fights. How we get there is a different matter. And as I said, I would make Hrgović a slight favourite against Dubois. I would make Zhang probably more than a slight favourite against Deontay Wilder. I think given their last performances, Zhang wasn't brilliant against Joseph Parker, but he still scored 2 knockdowns. He still remained a threat. And before that, he had a really couple of great back-to-back performances against Joe Joyce. And they're still fresh in the memory, whereas Wilder's been largely inactive in recent times. And the only fight we've seen him in the last couple of years was a pretty clear defeat, no matter what he says and the excuses we've heard since. It was a pretty clear defeat to Joseph Parker, who was all over him. He's just too fast, too active for someone who'd been out the ring for a long time and never has the greatest work rate even before that. And I think that's where this is an appealing fight perhaps for Zhang, because he's got a good chin, or as good as anyone in the heavyweight division. So, he might be able to stand up to Wilder's shots. But more importantly than that, Zhang's Achilles heel, as you pointed out, Ayman, is his lack of conditioning, stamina, falling off in the second half of fights. Wilder's not someone who's going to be constantly pressing him, darting around him, making him work in the same way Joseph Parker was. Wilder's going to be a threat for as long as he's on his feet because he's a massive puncher, but he's not a massive workhorse. So, Zhang should be able to pace himself a bit better than he has in the, the fallible moments we've seen him in against Hrgović, Jerry Forrest, and now more recently Joseph Parker. So then you've got to look at beyond the big punch because they're both big bangers. Who's gonna more likely to win the fight if it goes into the later rounds or goes the distance? Now, there are question marks, as we've said, about Zhang's stamina, but he is probably the better. Well, I'll say always definitely the better technical fighter. Might have hand speed's probably similar, footwork, pretty slow on Zhang's part, but it does have good technical footwork. So I'd probably make Zhang a relatively healthy favourite, particularly given recent form. And then as we go down the list in terms of weight, the next one down lighter is light heavyweight, which is an interesting one because it's been picked by Eddie Hearn, who you could understand if this was a year or two ago, but he doesn't have Joshua Buatsi anymore. Craig Richards, as far as we're aware, is a free agent and has been inactive in recent times. And then you look on the Warren side, he's got Anthony Yarde. Now, we don't expect Anthony Yarde to be part of this as things currently stand. Eddie Hearn's also not got Callum Smith anymore. So while Hearn was once very strong at 175, you now say Warren's probably a bit stronger. There's a talk of Zach Parker moving up, talk of other fighters potentially stepping in. Willie Hutchinson, I think, was mentioned as well on the Warren side. And then you've got Anthony Yarde, if he was used, who's one of the best light heavyweights in the world. So it's an interesting one there. Ayman, what do you expect to happen in that light heavyweight division?
Yeah, I imagine it to be Zach Parker versus Craig Richards here in this point. Interesting everything that you said, and I echo everything you said there with that light heavyweight mix. But I wouldn't rule out the possibility of we're waiting imminently for an announcement for Yarde versus Buatsi, but nothing's been signed or sealed there on that point. So could Zach Parker just be in holding for Anthony Yarde to take that spot there if the Yarde versus Buatsi negotiations fall to the wayside? But then from the Eddie Hearn point of view, like you mentioned there, not a lot going on for him at light heavyweight.
Oh,
so does that mean
no
that
longer here, Ayman, I'm assuming
someone else is drafted in? Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Can you hear it now? Yeah, you're back.
Can you hear me now? I had to say that a few times on the old streams back in the day. But yeah, does that mean that potentially with not a lot going on for Eddie Hearn at light heavyweight, is someone else can be drafted in, and that someone else could be someone who's looking for a fight date? And Eddie Hearn has said, once again, I would have credited it if I knew it from the top of my head, but didn't go back to check it. But I believe he said in an interview beforehand that Billy Joe Saunders was looking for a date for a return to the ring. Now, with Billy Joe Saunders floating up and down with the weights when he's outside of active camp, will he look to come back to
mostly up? In fairness,
mostly up. That's right. Will he look to come back at a heavier weight before going down to a super middleweight if he can indeed still make that? So, like heavyweight would probably seem an option for
Saunders,
Eddie Hearn, and for Saunders or Callum Smith. I mean, Callum Smith is there in the reckoning as well. I know that he was looking for a big fight to really kind of motivate him. Now, none of the fighters on the other side of the equation really would be a big fight outside of Yarde, which was the original kind of pitch, wasn't it, for the 5v5, Callum Smith versus Anthony Yarde. But if Yarde's out the picture, none of the other fighters really kind of seem to be a big motivating fight. But the money might be the motivator for Callum Smith there, as he would then. This is the other thing about the 5v5 for the light heavyweights as well too, because you're directly on the undercard of the undisputed fights. You immediately put yourself in the picture and reckoning when it comes to talking about the next possible opponents, because you're directly on that undercard. So it's a great position to be in. So that's maybe where Callum Smith might want to, not be fully motivated by the fight itself, but by the positioning of being on that undercard as well too, for maybe the future winner when the belts fragment. So maybe that's kind of what's enticing for Callum. Yeah, but that light heavyweight picture is probably the one that's most not fully assembled just yet.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. If it does become Zach Parker against Craig Richards, I mean, that's a tough fight for Zach Parker, given he lost that, final eliminator to John Ryder. He came back up at light heavyweight, laboured, it's fair to say, in his return performance. And then going up against Craig Richards, who, hasn't been the most active, but has certainly proved himself at the top level. He gave Dimitri Bivol a good fight in his WBA title challenge. He pushed Joshua Buatsi all the way. So, and it's his natural weight. He hasn't been a super middleweight for, when he stepped up to fight Frank Buglioni in his first British title challenge. So many years ago now. Spider's been at 175 for a long time. He's now with Shane McGuigan as well. So you'd expect him to be an improved fighter from the last time we saw him. He'll be a formidable opponent for whoever comes in from the, Queensbury side. And for it to be someone who's, his best wins, Murdoch, someone like that maybe, not from the A team for older viewers, but Rohan Murdoch, who was the WBO number 2, I believe, or number 1 when Parker fought him at super middleweight. So to move up to there and then suddenly jump in against someone like Craig Richards, yeah, I wouldn't fancy that for Zach Parker necessarily, but I'm sure he'll relish proving people like me wrong. Larry Liston says, I like the 5 versus 5 concept. Usually it's rare when promoters get together to do even one fight. This could put more eyes on the sport and particularly British boxing. Stephanie Bullend, and you can imagine what this person wants to talk about, although we'll get to that later in the show perhaps, says, will this capture casuals' imagination? It feels like something just for hardcores mainly. Who outside of boxing fans would care really if Hearn and Frank are working together? Yeah, I think a lot of that, Stephanie, if that's your real name, it depends on how they market it. You know, if they do a really good kind of promo video where Barry Hearn gets involved and George Warren gets involved and they're talking about the family rivalry and the history of the promoters in the UK and why it means so much and make it real kind of old school, even, you know, craze, old school London gangster type thing, I think that could really cross over, but they've got to tell that story effectively. I think that's what it will depend on.
Danny, I get Stephanie Bullen's point because look, there's bragging rights and there's jeopardy for Queensberry and Matchroom participants and the companies, the figureheads, sure, but what value is there for the fan watching outside of the fights? Sure, they're good fights and the team, and there's that team element concept, but it doesn't go deeper than what it is. So you've intrigued the fans, but you've got to make them care now. So I don't get, like, hardcore fans aren't either Team Frank or Team Eddie. I know that they love the back and forth and they'll have their feelings as to who's right and who's wrong, but no one's turning up to the shows with a Team Queensberry shirt or a Matchroom shirt.
I'm sure if they sent you one,
exactly. I think that's what they probably have to do is like with your ticket or whatever, or you get a free shirt or 10% off the next show or something if Queensberry win, like something like that makes people care. As it is right now, it doesn't.
Yeah, I agree. Although I'm sure there'll be certain people in our line of work in boxing media who are backing their more, favourite promoter. And I open myself up to that criticism here because obviously I do know Frank Warren a lot better than I know Eddie Hearn. But we are all about brown-nosing, bias and bullshit out here on Seconds Out, for anyone who hasn't seen our brand identity. Larry Liston says, plenty of things to capture the casual's imagination, Stephanie. The Jake Paul stuff and the AJ versus Ngannou thing, boxing also has to appeal to its hardcore fan base from time to time, regular consumers. DB Cooper 1, light heavyweight is odd. When you put it like that, you can see why Hearn's so mad at Boxer for stealing Buatsi, hence the lawsuit and PR campaign of feeding info to journos at the Times, low blows. Are they low blows though? I don't know who's guilty of what in the situation, but if something has gone on and if there is an involvement from a figure who's got a very controversial past, are they low blows? Surely we want stuff like this being exposed. Now, the motivation for that exposure probably hasn't come from the best place, but that's a kind of different argument. Larry Liston, wasn't there talks of a Yard versus Callum fight would be a fun scrap? Yeah, there was. I think people assume that Callum was still with Hearn, whereas he's actually a free agent. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to see that. DB Cooper 1, the potential for the promo is wild. Recreation of Frank being shot and Hearn simply being handed the keys to the kingdom. Oh God, boxing has more than one royal family. Yeah. Stephanie Bullen, to be honest, is Callum in a position to demand only big fights? He's beat no one of worth at light heavyweight, and his last outing wasn't the most impressive. Yeah, but he's still a name, and he's still a former champion at super middleweight. He's fought Canelo, didn't disgrace himself there at all. So, yeah, I mean, I think he can demand big fights, certainly at a certain level. He's probably financially pretty secure as well. CMP Russell CMP says, why can't Spencer Oliver stay still when he talks? I think he's just a very excited, animated figure, and maybe there is some element of the injuries he suffered that ended his boxing career. I don't know. But I've known Spencer for a long time. Used to live really close to him as well in East Barnet. Really great guy. I think he loves boxing. He loves the excitement of talking about it. If only we could all be so energetic and animated about the sport we love. DB Cooper 1. Oh, Ayman, you'd be surprised at how many people would wear a promoter's t-shirt. The new era of content YouTube has created fans, in inverted commas, air quotes, of promoters who don't even watch boxing. Disgusting. Yeah, okay. Larry Liston, isn't that more an American thing, DB Cooper, like the top-ranked fanboys against the PBC fans? I don't think that sort of rivalry exists in the UK. I'm not sure about between Matchroom and Queensberry specifically, but if you look at YouTube comments for any of our videos in recent times, and unfortunately I do, you see a lot of the kind of partisan rivalry. At the moment, a lot of it is bigging up Frank and Eddie and putting down Boxer more than anything because of the recent things that have gone on. We're going to be talking about that later in the show. But yeah, I think there are certain fans who identify with certain promoters for good or bad. I think bad, but that's just my view. DB Cooper. Oh, now DB Cooper one's asking about someone else standing still. We don't care about all this staying still stuff, DB Cooper one. Let's talk about 5 versus 5. Babatunde Ajayi, I don't know if it's the real Babatunde Ajayi, says it's Yard versus anyone. Nobody's interested in a light heavyweight fight in Saudi unless Anthony is involved. Prove me wrong. Well, it certainly sounds like the real Tunde Ajayi. I'm going to drop him a little text here because if it is, he could quite easily join us on the show. So let's find out if that's the real Tunde Ajayi. And if he's listening to me now, he'll already be sending me a thing saying, yes, it is me. Oh,
if even if it's not him, I'd say I'd have maximum interest in Yard versus anyone else as well, if that's the statement, because Yard very much does bring the intrigue in that light heavyweight division for sure. Well, outside of the top two.
Yeah, I've just seen his status on WhatsApp says no longer on WhatsApp. So this may not be as easy as I thought. It's me, mate. I'm on holiday. Yeah, right. I'm not so convinced now. But yeah, you can respond to my text if you're no longer on the WhatsApps. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, moving on from light heavyweight, the next division down is middleweight. Frank Warren said something in the thing with Turki Al Sheikh about it being a traditional division and they're strong at middleweight. Oh yeah, he's just texted me. It's me, Dan, with a winky face. Yes, why are you saying you're on holiday then? Because you don't want to come on the stream.
Respect to Tunde.
You've got Wi-Fi wherever you are, Tunde. We know you too well. I bet you're still doing your show from your holiday. But yeah, Frank Warren was saying about being strong at middleweight, which he is. Hamza Shiraz is the one that's been talked about. You've also got the British champion, Nathan Heaney, who defended his belt in a draw recently against Brad Pauls. And Denzel Bentley, of course, the former British champion, who's desperate to get back in the ring. So they are pretty strong at middleweight. You can see why he picked that division. Who are we expecting, Ayman, from the Matchroom side?
Yeah, look, I think this is pretty much all but confirmed when it comes to the whispers and going on, keeping my ears to the ground with everything that goes on amongst the industry. And I believe this to be Hamza Shiraz versus Amma Williams here for this fight. Again, anything can happen, but I think Amma Williams looking for a big opportunity. But that's not coming right now. But a big opportunity on the 5v5 appears to be his slot. Hamza Shiraz really on the rise, hasn't he? Hasn't really fought at that side of the couple of rounds that he had against Bradley Skeet. But I firmly believe that he was going to come through the Skeet test, but for what happened with the minor controversy in that fight there. But yeah, Shiraz, someone on the rise. Williams as well, too, looking for a slot at the top. And I think one of them will come through with that slot.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like the most advantageous position for Matchroom, although Ammo Williams gets one of the British middleweights would certainly be exciting. I'd be interested to see how that one would pan out. And then featherweight. Now, we thought that Ray Ford against Nick Ball was pretty much nailed on. Ray Ford said in a recent interview that he's up for still fighting Nick Ball, despite Ball only drawing with Ray Vargas in that WBC title fight. But then Ray Ford said on social media today, he's not on it. He's not fighting till July, I think was the post. So is it a bit of double bluffing from Ray Ford, or will Eddie Hearn have to look elsewhere for his featherweight representative?
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't actually seen that that post from Ray Ford himself. So I would probably say that might likely be a red herring from Ray Ford. Could they potentially do something where instead of having Nick Ball take on Ray Ford, they actually do a rematch with Ray Vargas? I think he's with Top Rank, is he, Ray Vargas? So maybe there's a situation there where they can have a quick turnaround on that fight. But I'm not sure actually as to who kind of comes in and step into the picture there. Maybe just Josh Warrington, yeah. But then Lee Wood himself put up a post himself out the other day saying, I'm hearing some noise, and then put a picture of Josh Warrington. So is there something in that fight maybe being reignited as well? So that's very unclear actually as to what that picture might be right now. But yeah, so that's an interesting one. Mauricio Lara, maybe, is he still at the weight? Yeah, I'm not sure actually.
Yeah, I think that's the most intriguing one now. I mean, Nick Ball still seems pretty much laid on. He came out of that fight with Vargas, didn't look too worse for wear, looked like he could go again the next day. So I'm sure he'll be eager to get back in, but he'll have wanted it to be a Ray Ford because it's a second world title shot in a row, and he can put right what he feels went wrong the first time. Although I felt he was a bit unlucky not to get the decision against Vargas in the first place. So
Danny,
yeah,
are we looking too high up the chain? Could it be Hopey Price and Nat Collins? Last I saw that Hopey Price did have a hand injury, but he might have recovered now. There's been some time since that.
You've let the air out the balloon a bit there, Ayman. I'm not going to lie to
you. It would be, but with that movement from Ray, if we're taking that as to be true, everything else kind of seems maybe a little bit one-sided. It doesn't seem more probable to materialize. But that fight with Price and Collins seems like one they could fall back on.
Perhaps. Now, just going back to some of the comments, Stephanie Bullen is asking where she can order an MTK shirt. I think they've all been burnt to a crisp, to be honest. I don't know. When we were at the Ben Davison Performance Centre recently, there is still some MTK branding dotted about where they haven't quite finished painting it over yet. So maybe get in touch with some people there. I don't know. But yeah, jokes aside, I have no idea. Simon Rainey, my dad worked with Hamza in the gym for a short time. Trust me, that kid's a beast. Presumably, Simon, you're Howard Rainey's son. Great guy at Howard. Yeah, hope that's the case. DB Cooper 1. Hamza Shiraz versus Ammo Williams is a solid fight. Good step up for Shiraz to prove himself. Looking forward to this one. The most bar the big names. Larry Liston, Hamza versus Ammo would be fireworks. I got Hamza. He has great potential, in my opinion. I agree. I've been very impressed with him since he's moved up to middleweight. DB Cooper 1's calling Ray Ford overrated AF. Didn't he say he wants to move up in weight, but Hearn is trying to convince him to stay for 5 versus 5. But I agree. Red herring. Larry Liston and DB Cooper 1 are dominating the chat today. Where's our man? Where's Thunder Road? Telling everyone to give us a thumbs up. Well, he's not here, so I'll tell you guys. Please give us a thumbs up and a subscription if you haven't already. Hit us with some questions and comments. We don't want it to be dominated by Larry Liston and DB Cooper 1. Tunde J is still very active on WhatsApp now. I don't know if he'll stay on it. He says he's only reactivated it for me, but I'm sure he says that to all the boxing journalists. But he's given a hard pass on coming onto the stream, at least this time around. Probably sees us as competition. I'll get a text in a minute saying we haven't got competition done. Simon Rainey says, yes, sir, thank you for your kind words. He passed in December. Yes, I'm aware. May he rest in power, as I guess that's what people say these days. But yeah, he's a great guy, always coming up with new ideas about training and working in the gym and devices and stuff that he could use to help with the training process. So yeah, great guy, Howard Rainey. DB Cooper 1, Liston versus DB Cooper, rumble in the comments on the Turkey payroll. Mate, DB Cooper 1, you wouldn't be spending your time watching us. As much as we feel we are essential viewing, you wouldn't be wasting your time watching us if you were getting the sort of money that Turkey doles out. The closest I've got to Turkey Al Sheikh's wallet so far is him following me on Twitter, and I follow him back. I'm not trying to name drop there, but yeah, he hasn't responded to my DMs asking for an interview just yet. But yeah, they're the only DMs I send on Twitter now, by the way. Moving on from that, we saw some action at the weekend. As excited as we are about the 5 versus 5, I think some of the performances at the weekend, particularly in Sheffield, but what Frank Warren had a show on Friday night as well, got us pretty excited in the current era of boxing. Dalton Smith got past. He put on a bit of a statement, actually, in the main event against Jose Sean Zepeda. Not the Zepeda of old, perhaps, but he'd only been dissected by fighters at the very top level previously. And this time around, it was Dalton Smith that got him out there with a beautiful right hand to the body. And we now wait to see what happens. But we want to talk more specifically about the current furore, the argument between Boxer and Matchroom over a fight between Dalton Smith and Adam Azim. Ayman, before I kind of go into detail on this, what do you make of it? Maybe you can kind of lay it out a little bit for the people out there who aren't aware of what's going on.
Okay, so I'll lay it out first and I'll give you my take because I'm very glad that you've come to me for this, Danny. Laying it out here, the situation is that Adam Azim.
Adam Azim. Frank
Yeah.
Warren called him Aziz earlier.
There we go. Yeah, a bit of a
Azim, Adam Aziz.
That's the one. Adam Azim, I'll say it again, captured the European title over in Wolverhampton. I was there on the card. He was mandated for the fight. He captured the title. And then he's been ordered to defend the European title. Who was ordered to be the first defense? None other than Dalton Smith. That fight was then, I believe, they were talking about whether they can make the fight. But the belief is that when it came to negotiations or conversations surrounding the fight, that Boxer and Azim weren't ready to step to the table for that fight and didn't want to take the fight themselves. There was, however, the conversation from Adam Azim saying, look, he's not going to be ready for when the fight was mandated for because he's doing fasting. And Dalton Smith had already had a fight lined up as well too. I don't think Zepeda might have been announced at the time, but Dalton Smith was confirmed at the very least to be fighting on this weekend. So that was the situation as far as I remember, unless I'm missing out any parts of the story. Danny, can you just confirm me? No?
Well, I think that's right. Smith had a fight lined up. Adam Azim had Ramadan, of course, and they delayed the purse bids by mutual consent.
That's right. So now when it comes to my thoughts on this, I'm quite amped about this, and I'm probably going to annoy or upset people with how I feel about this. But Vinny, we need to strap the listeners in and sound the hot take alert for this one. Yes, and my hot take is this, Danny, and listeners in the chat. I'm not bothered about a Dalton Smith versus Adam Azim fight right now. Where actually is the clamour for the two to fight? It's a trade fight, a good fight, sure. But neither of these are stars and are selling out arenas. Neither of these have any real rivalry other than being Brits rising in the same division at the same time. Speaking of clamour, Smith versus Azim doesn't resonate with me as a top British clash that I would wish for right now. Fury versus Joshua, Wood versus Warrington 2, Taylor Catchwell 2, Dubois versus Joyce 2, Yard versus Boazzi. Outside of the EBU ordering it, there's no demand. And Eddie Hearn, credit to him dominating that PR battle versus Boxer and Benchlam. But when you say it's a step backwards for your man, you're really saying we don't want it either because we are onto bigger and better things. And you are. You halted Zepeda. The only way is up. You'll both meet soon, but the fight isn't happening now. I'm not bothered about that fight happening now. I don't know too many people that are really pushing for that fight right now.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, maybe a lukewarm take, if you like. What I would say is, though, from Boxer's perspective, they could have handled this so much better. You know,
Sure.
from a PR standpoint. I was speaking to Sam Jones about this on a recent interview. It's on the channel now. And we both agreed that if you're Ben Shalom or anyone from Boxer, because Ben Shalom doesn't do interviews at the moment with the YouTube video outlets, but anyone who represents Boxer should have just come out and said, look, Adam Azim really wants to fight. He thinks he'll knock Dalton Smith out. He's banging down my... I'm starting to sound like Eddie Hearn here. He's banging down my door and he's saying he want to knock him out. But it's our duty of care as promoters to hold him back and to pick the right fights at the right times. Do I believe that Adam Azim beat... This is me talking as Ben Shalom. Do I believe Adam Azim beats Dalton Smith right now? Yes. Do I believe that the odds are more in his favour in 2 years' time? Even more so. Do I think he'll make a lot more money in 2 years' time for that fight? Of course. So even though he really wants to fight, we're going to make a better decision here. And then the argument about it goes away. Obviously, questions might be asked in why they delayed the purse bids rather than just withdrawing him in the first place. But you avoid a lot of the flack. And some of that flack goes to Azim as well. Even though I think most people, certainly in the industry, believe that it's nothing to do with him and that he would take the fight if it was his choice. So it's a tricky one in that sense, but I think it could have been navigated far more sensibly by a Boxer. And that's why the headline is Boxer balls up. The question mark's there out of kindness. I think they have balls up. And I think the problem is it's not the only time this has happened. You know, you had the issue before with Frazer Clarke and Fabio Wardley. Granted, they're now fighting this Sunday, of course. But, you know, pulling him out of the purse bids previously. And it's become a pattern. And this is something that fans, and this is more hardcore fans than casuals, they won't respect them for it. When Ben Shalom first started this relationship with Sky Sports, it landed really well. You had that short period where they had, what was it? Khan Brook, Taylor Catchall 1, and Liam Williams, Chris Eubank Jr. all around the same time. That was like their first slate of shows that they announced all in one go. And people were really excited. Oh, Sky are going to do really well even without Eddie Hearn. Look at these fights. You know, these are fights people want to see. There's a pay-per-view fight as part of it, etc., etc. Since then, it's gone a bit quiet. They're still putting on good shows. They're still putting on good trade fights and domestic clashes. We've seen very few pay-per-views with actual boxer fighters involved that they haven't had to buy in and work with other promoters to make. They've been completely excluded from the whole Saudi situation so far. Their fighters haven't appeared on any of the shows. They haven't been part of any of the events. And now stuff like this, it's not really going to help. You know, you want to, especially with signing new boxers as well, people that are turning over from the amateurs, you want to know that you're signing with someone who comes across as professional, trustworthy. And that's why it's a public relations battle, because boxer will say, and quite rightly so, yes, all right, we are doing the best thing by Adam Azim. You know, we are trustworthy and loyal to our fighters, because it's not the right time for Adam Azim to fight Dalton Smith. He's got a much better chance than he has now in a few years, and he'll make a lot more money from it. No one would argue with that. But if you're looking to sign with someone, you want to know that they're going to make you look good, or at least, at the very least, not make you look bad to the general public who you're relying on to make you a star. And doing stuff like this really doesn't help Adam Azim at all. But rant over. Let me have a look at some of the comments. Even our own Josh Green is here on his day off. So, oh no, it's not his day off today. Sorry. Yeah, Josh, get back to work, mate. Larry Liston said, personally, I wouldn't mind seeing Dalton against Ishmael Barroso, who's the interim 140-pound champion. Would be a great test if the Azim fight can't be made. Yeah, I mean, Barroso still looks like he's doing pretty well for, 105 years old. Josh Green says, Azim won the title from Petitjean and defended against Paulson, I believe. Wow, not only has he come on his not day off, he's having a go at you, Ayman. He's correcting you.
He's there we go. That's what he's here for.
Lean Josh Green, who's going back to the podcast days, giving us the stats. But you're quite right, Josh. He did win it from Petitjean and did defend it against Enoch Paulson. Cole W says, it does feel like DeGale versus Groves, though. Maybe at a lower level. I mean, you know.
No, it doesn't.
Dalton Smith was a good amateur, but he wasn't an Olympic gold medalist. And there wasn't that feud. You know, they've got no history, really. They respect each other. DeGale and Groves hated each other. I think they get on all right now, but they hated each other. DB Cooper 1 says, nah, come on, Ayman. You've got to learn it's Ayman with 2 A's, not an E, DB Cooper 1. You've been coming on here for long enough and you keep spelling it wrong. That ain't a hot take. Most real boxing fans I know don't mind seeing this in a few years. It's just promoter beef and Hearn's big gob getting his fangirls excited for a fake war.
Key point, most real boxing fans. I don't think the wider public know it's Hearn winning the PR battle, because Ben Shalom isn't speaking right now. Like to Danny's point where he's saying, you know, protecting their fight is that PR battle. Ben Shalom's not speaking right now. Boxer aren't speaking right now. They've lost horribly in the past when it comes to these PR battles. So now their tactic is to not approach it at all. And that's where they just get run over even further. That's the point there. But no one's coming back with anything on the Azim side there, apart from Azim himself. Shane McGuigan is too long in the tooth as well to get too drawn in either. So that's my side of it. I don't think the full wider boxing fans fully get the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly do think that a simple statement or a post on social media early in this process would have avoided all of this. So Stephanie Bullen, Azim versus Smith is a good fight, but Eddie's going on like it's a super fight. I think Eddie's just seen an opportunity to embarrass a competitor, and he's taken it as most promoters would. Eddie had years to make AJ versus Wilder/Fury and didn't do so. Spend energy trying to make fights people care about. Yeah, I mean, they don't need to, though, do they now? Because you've got Turki Al Sheikh with his, endless supply of cash who can make those fights for them, and they can, get some of the praise and the wealth by association, which, minimal effort, maximum revenue or reward, which is what you want. JDM says, we had the same problems when Eddie was with Sky and Frank with BT. Yeah, quite true. DB Cooper 1 says, nice slip up calling Azim Adam Smith the other day, mate. To Josh, this is. Had the whole YouTube squad and Hearn laughing. I didn't, that passed me by, that one. JDM Crawler Flanagan all over again. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a better comparison then, isn't it? Stephanie Bullen, agree. It's been going on for ages. Difference is Shalom doesn't have the same clout with the media, so he's getting slated. It isn't that he hasn't got the same clout with the media, as Ayman just pointed out. He refuses to deal with the boxing media at the moment because he has had his fingers burned in the past, and I understand his point of view. But this is a situation where one of two things needs to happen. Either you decide, you know what, I am going to deal with the boxing media on this one thing, and I don't, because you can do it on your terms. You can say, look, I'm only going to answer questions about this one thing, and some will accept that and some won't, and they're the ones who get the story. Or you have someone else in the boxer family who you can wheel out for situations just like this, where you need to have a public-facing role, and get them to do it. Now, it's not John Wischusen, because he's brilliant at everything, but he will not do interviews because it's just not something he didn't do when he was at Matchroom, and he's just not that kind of guy. He doesn't want the spotlight. It's probably not Savage Dan, although he works for Boxer and he's charismatic enough. He's probably not senior enough in the Boxer structure to be the person talking. In the past, it was Adam Smith, but he no longer works for Sky Sports.
And he was brilliant.
Say again?
And he was brilliant.
Yeah, he was great. He would have been the perfect person to do this job. So now you need someone else to fill that role if you don't want to do it yourself. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. But time is ticking on. We've talked enough about Boxer balls up ? What we should be doing is looking ahead to Sunday, Easter Sunday. We don't very rarely see fights in the UK on Easter Sunday. We've also got a press conference on Good Friday as a result. But it's a fight that we just alluded to there between Frazer Clarke, the challenger, and the British heavyweight champion, Fabio Wardley. Seems to have captured the public imagination. Apparently over 10,000 tickets sold already at the O2 or for the O2. Good card overall, but I think the one everyone's excited about has to be the main event. Ayman, how do you kind of weigh this one up? Could you set the scene for us?
Yeah, look, just to talk about the card very quickly here, I think it's a very, very, very good card, to be fair, from Boxer. When we see, again, I hate the phrase stacked card, and this isn't, I don't go as far as stacked card, but it's a very, very good card, and they should be applauded for the fighters there and some of the fighters that are maneuvering into positions. Ben Whittaker active again. Alan Babbage for Steve Robinson. Look, Babbage is what he is, and so is Steve Robinson, but that should be a good fight in prospect for what it is. Vidal Riley and Michaela Wall, very good cruiserweight fight there. Vidal Riley could be one of the new next generation of stars if he gets it right. Callum Simpson, another hot prospect coming through. Florian Marco versus Chris Congo, a lot of intrigue, and then I don't know if it's like fake beef or not, whatever, but there is that rivalry between the two, and Congo has been calling out Marco for a long, long time. And then, of course, headlined by Fabio Wardley versus Frazer Clarke. Frazer gets the opportunity now to silence the doubters surrounding him and his career. Fabio Wardley very much probably the best at the British level crop, and he's proven himself to be that by capturing that British title. Whether Adelaide really was at British level or not might be another thing, but I think Wardley proved that he was definitely at British level, and he did by capturing that title. Two completely different backgrounds. When this was first announced, actually, it was quite interesting because a lot of people were really favouring Fabio off the back of his performance. And
Just
basically,
to say, sorry to interrupt you, I feel they could have made more of that difference in backgrounds. I feel like, and this is again a Boxer PR thing and Sky Sports, I think they could have really pushed that out there. The hard scrabble, white collar background of Fabio late start against the traditional route of Frazer, Olympic medalist. That's the crux of it, isn't it? That's a classic kind of dynamic.
Two things though. One thing is I feel that's kind of done and washed off of Fabio Wardley now. I think he's kind of brushed that off. I get it's part of his background, but I think he's with the British title win and other wins that he's had beforehand. I think you've really kind of erased that as your background. You can't really focus on that too much. The other point is it's damage control as well too, because if your fighter loses from being an Olympic pedigree background, having win bronze, was it? Am I right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he won the bronze medal, and then you lose to someone of a white collar background. That's a really, really bad look when all is said and done. So I think Boxer probably have done the best thing there by not leaning into that too much. But that will be lent to anyway by both those fighters. But yeah, when it first came out, Fabio Wardley seemed to be like the overwhelming favorite from what I was seeing from my ear to the ground with things. But as the fights come closer, I feel like now people are starting to rely and put their faith in Frazer Clarke's Olympic pedigree. Now, Frazer, like I said, has a lot to answer for in some of his performances in the past. Not really put out that stellar performance yet. Not really kind of labored, and we haven't really seen what that Olympic pedigree means for him in the professional sense. So he's got to do that now, because Fabio Wardley will bring it to him. And Fabio Wardley isn't just a marauding, come forward, all action fighter. He's got IQ to him. He sets things up. He puts those feints in, almost comically sometimes as he does. And he looks back on some of those performances where he's maybe over feinted too much. But Fabio Wardley really, I still think, comes in the favourite to the fight there. But for Frazer, there's an opportunity really now to really put himself up there and really kind of cement himself in the scene. Because if he doesn't now, a lot of the steam goes off of him. A lot of kind of the credibility of his background goes away from him too. And then it's a hard road back for Frazer as well. And that's what Sky Sports and Boxer like, though, when it comes to Frazer, because he's the clean cut Olympic background. That's what they really push. And to lose one of those gems now at this level is a real problem for them. So a real important pressure probably all on Frazer really when it comes to actually Fabio being the champion.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the chat in a minute, but just to say, I was next to Chris Congo and Florian Marku when they kicked off. I think I'm not sure who I was interviewing, but I was next to the interview that Marku was doing. And when, was it Congo got pushed? Whoever got pushed flew past me, basically, at a rate of knots. So I don't think it is fake beef seeing their reactions on the day as well, unless they're very good actors. And if they were, they wouldn't be boxing for a living. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's genuine beef. Carl W says, Eddie is the best at PR. He can really do you up like a kipper if you don't fire back. Eddie having it all his own way currently. Yeah, I mean, because the person who could stand up to him a bit is now his best mate in Frank Warren because of the developments we've seen. Gary says, hello, Danny. It's politeness that we don't normally see on the chat. No offense, guys. Do you think Ben Shalom needs the YouTube channels to elevate boxer? Eggy has control over most channels, I see. I don't think he has control necessarily, and certainly not over most channels. He doesn't control this channel. Let me tell you. Let me talk to you. No, he doesn't. He'd be on here a lot more often, I guess, maybe if he liked us a bit more in that regard. But no, I mean, he doesn't control this channel. And I think there's some other respected independent channels out there as well. Boxing News springs to mind with their link to the magazine side as well. But yes, I do believe Ben Shalom should use more media to elevate boxer. Not necessarily just boxing media, though. I think there's the national newspaper and national broadcaster environment as well, Talk Sport and so on. But yeah, I mean, I think engaging with the media with a smart media strategy, yeah, that's definitely a thing that all boxing promoters, all sports and live event promoters should do. But yeah, JDM says, I fancy Wardley to win within 4 rounds. Say Less says, Hearn has also got higher ups brushing any controversy or dirt to the side. Not really sure how to verify that. Stephanie Bullend is still trying to talk about Steffi Bull and Terry Harper. We're not really covering that in this episode, Stephanie Bullend. So I'm going to read out this one comment that you've made, and then that'll be it. Has there ever been a male champion at 154 who kept the belt and fought, slight misspell there, for a title at 147 and blamed lack of size for being stopped at a weight below? That's such a specific reference, Stephanie. I'm really not sure. I mean, I imagine in the whole history of boxing, and particularly boxers making excuses, someone probably has, but I'm not going to go out on a limb and say definitely. Larry Liston, I reckon Frazer gets found out by Wardley. Wardley is the quicker, more mobile heavyweight, and Frazer hasn't really been tested yet. No one's really given us Frazer Clarke backing here. I feel like, because if I have to pick, I'll probably be picking Wardley, but I feel like I've got to make a case for Frazer Clarke winning. So what I'm going to say is the transition from amateur to pro is more difficult, more challenging the longer you've been an amateur. Because I know a lot of people like to cite long amateur records as a positive for the most part, guys like Golovkin, Lomachenko, and so on. But in a lot of cases, if you've been, indoctrinated into a certain style and a certain setup, it's not just about the style you employ in the ring under Team GB. It's also how it all works, having your in-house nutritionist, having your in-house strength and conditioning work, in-house track work, and so on. And being surrounded by a team environment, a squad environment. Frazer Clarke did that for several Olympic cycles. So he's kind of been made in that mold, and it's hard to get out of that if that's what you're used to. Now he's at a gym with a very good trainer in Angel Fernandez, and he's got a few other people there, so there is a certain level of a team environment, but nowhere near as busy. He's probably going to different people now for strength and conditioning and nutrition and so on. It's probably not all in-house, and now he's got to deal with the media to a much larger extent than he did as an amateur, despite the Olympic medal. And a lot of that takes time to transition to. I don't think his team, because he is one of boxers' biggest names, and the management group he's got behind him, I don't think they get him to fight Fabio Wardley if they didn't truly believe we would see something from Frazer Clarke on Sunday that we haven't previously in his other fights. So I think we will see a career best performance as a pro from Frazer Clarke on Sunday. I also think Fabio Wardley maybe hasn't proved beyond doubt that he's ready to leave the domestic level behind. I think if he wins this clearly, that will be the one. But he does have flaws. He can be hit. He can be hurt. The problem for Frazer Clarke is, though, when that happens, it generally serves to wake Fabio Wardley up, and he comes back with a ferocity we haven't seen before he got tagged. I probably would back Wardley if I had to pick right now. I think he's the better mover. He's probably the more versatile fighter overall, and probably hits a little bit harder as well. And certainly the more experienced as a professional in all the nuances of the pro game. Having said all of that, though, a Frazer Clarke win wouldn't shock me because the pedigree and the talent is there and has been for a long time. It's just whether he's far enough down the transitional route from the amateurs to fight someone at Fabio Wardley's level. Let's have a look at some more on the chat because I saw loads coming through as I was talking. Kev Leafy says, surprised so many think Wardley wins easily. Not surprised if Frazer wins. Elevate his game with better competition. Carl W. I think Ben is doing a poor job with the PR, bearing in mind he has Sky Sports vehicle to push his events, such as Sky Sports News, blah, blah. Really poor. And could GBM take the Sky contract? So let me take these kind of points in turn. Yes, they could make better use of Sky as a platform. However, how much of that's down to Ben Shalom and how much of that's down to Sky? Eddie Hearn said in an interview with Josh Green last week, that the appetite for boxing isn't there at Sky anymore. Some of the people in the more senior positions aren't particularly boxing fans. And now Adam Smith's moved on as well. Maybe that's what's missing rather than, I've been piling on, I feel, Ben Shalom and Boxer in this episode. But I think you have to look at Sky on that side of things. And a bit about GBM, no. I think if they don't renew Boxer's contract at the end of this year, it's more likely that Sky move away from boxing entirely than take on a new promoter. GBM are doing good things so far. But Sky were offered the opportunity before linking up with Boxer to do a deal with Wasserman, I believe. And there were some other talks about two companies coming together, like smaller companies, to be, the whole's bigger than the sum of its parts. And they weren't really interested. So I think if they think Boxer's not good enough for what they want, and obviously Sky's boxing model is predominantly pay-per-view based, and that hasn't done very well recently on Sky, I could see them walking away from the sport entirely, which would be a shame, but the podcast is out there pushing the boxing agenda at least. Jose, he really knows how to dig himself out of the trenches, specifically Gary says, don't be surprised if Clarke wins. Clarke is a better boxer, but a large part of boxing is to be able to take a shot. They are gambling on Clarke on guessing after 7 rounds. Stephanie Bullen still talking about Steffi Bull, so we're going to ignore that one. Who's up to the party? He says, freaking hell, I thought it normally starts at 5 p.m, doesn't it? Maybe I'm wrong. No, you are right, but we did advertise across social media the earlier start time this week of 4 p.m. You can still watch it on playback. It's not lost forever. There's some really good stuff that you've missed, though. Larry Liston, Clarke will definitely gas. He did 10 rounds before once with the corpse of Marius back. He can't compete conditioning-wise with Wardley over 12, I guarantee it. If he doesn't get an early stoppage, he...
I'll step in if you guys can hear me. Vinny, if you want to jump over to myself, let me know in the chat if you can hear me whilst Danny is arresting his audio situation. But yeah, whilst Danny was talking about Frazer Clarke versus Fabio Wardley, I'll let you know what I think about potentially a cautionary tale in regards to Frazer Clarke specifically, and that goes to a former opponent of Fabio Wardley's, being Nathan Gorman. Frazer only really has to have a look at. Yeah, you hear me. Brilliant. No worries. Yeah, so Frazer only really has to look. I can hear you, unfortunately. Good one, Danny. You caught me. Yeah, Frazer only really has to look at Nathan Gorman. And Nathan Gorman was once in what was billed as a 50-50 against Daniel Dubois. Big fight feel to that at that level. And then Nathan Gorman found himself on the end of a real bad defeat for himself, and then really just kind of slid. He slid down to smaller profile fights. He was backed by Wasserman, had those kind of comeback fights against the likes of Thomas Salek and such. And then when he was then thrown back up again into the mix, back against Fabio Wardley, he then lost that one in 3 rounds, what it was, and then had a comeback fight again against Myronets, and then lost that one too. And that's the sort of slippery slope that someone like Frazer Clarke might find themselves in, having got that pedigree, people talking about him to be proficient to a degree, like how Nathan Gorman was with the background that he had as well. Suffers that defeat, then finds himself out of that big profile, then finds himself out of that motivation, then finds himself as an opponent to someone else, then finds himself at the age of 32 is he now? 33, 34, 35, on the back end of probably his career for a heavyweight, and not being in those high profile fights, not fulfilling his potential. It's a real slippery slope that he could find himself against on. So that's what kind of worries me from a Clarke perspective as to how much pressure is actually on his shoulders for this weekend. I mean, no one can really and wants to lose the fight, but maybe Wardley could take the L a little bit here if it was to be a defeat for him. I think Danny might have arrested his sound issue, and we'll bring him back here in a second. I can barely just about hear you, Danny. Danny, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Danny. It seemed like you were on a roll, and then someone put the stop to it. I think it was the audio gods or something.
I think it was Ben Shalom.
it wasn't Ben Shalom. It might have been Josh. He's looking for both our jobs.
Yeah, I think I was just requesting, as I was rudely interrupted by my own lack of technical skills. I think I was requesting the poll results on the 5 versus 5. So, Mod Father Vinny, if you can now hear me, it'd be great to get those poll results. Here we go. We asked you who wins the 5 versus 5 contest overall between Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren. Don't forget, double points for your selected captain in a nod to fantasy football. And the winner, and it's a close one, Eddie Hearn, 54%, Frank Warren, 45%. So most people saying Eddie Hearn's going to come out on top. Now, when we were going through the weight divisions in the first half an hour of this show, I couldn't work out where many of Eddie Hearn's wins were coming from. But yeah, he's managed to, DB Cooper 1 says Eddie Hearn nuked Flexen's Wi-Fi because we were onto his PR tactics. I think maybe we should suspect Eddie Hearn for muting my audio, so more people started voting for him in the 5 versus 5. But yeah, he's come out on top. Ayman, are you surprised?
A little bit, again, because we don't fully know the fighters just yet. We know the weights, but we don't know the fights just yet. So it's really kind of hard where to put my last vote. Is there a third option for what Frank would say? The fans are the real winners here for the fans. I think the fans are probably the overall winners here, but I probably just about back Warren's stable overall for the fights that are mooted for Dwar Rich. Probably pick Dwar Ford versus Ball if it's that. I know we didn't pick that one, but I'd be picking Raymond Ford there. Parker versus Richards. Oh no, in fact, I've changed my mind. I'll be backing Eddie. What am I talking about here? So I agree with the poll results here. Actually, there you go. Had to do some logical thinking on the spot there.
Did you kill my audio?
It might have been me. Yeah, that's right.
It's all coming out now. All right,
Yeah.
guys, if you haven't already, please do give us a thumbs up and a subscribe. We'll be back next week. We'll let you know whether it's 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. Ramoni Mode XD. Thunder Road will be turning up in a minute. Really appreciate you watching. If you're watching on playback rather than live, please do still leave comments. You've missed out on the live chat, but we do respond to some of the comments. So please do that. And we'll put out some clips from the show as well over the next few days. But thanks all for tuning in, and we'll be back next week. And as usual, the final comments will come from Mr. Ayman Khan.
Yeah, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe. Got much more boxing content coming your way here on Seconds Out. Maybe an appearance from Babatunde Ajayi as well, too, when he comes back off from his holiday, well-deserved holiday. Tunde is having over there. Great to see the usual faces like Thunder Road, DB Cooper here, and as well. Stephanie Bullen, you contributed to. Danny Gilfillan, is that there? There's a little bit of envy looking over here as well, too. Danny, good to see you in the chat. But yeah, look, I'll be there myself, stationed for the Boxer Fight Week. Frazer Clarke and Fabio Wardley versus Clarke. I'll be searching out that Ben Shalom interview. Even if it doesn't come, I'll be hot on the heels of Ben, trying to land him on the camera if I can in an interview. But we'll keep you abreast of all the week's action too. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in to Seconds Out Live. 4 p.m., 5 p.m. Doesn't matter if you guys are here joining us as well too. Thank you so much. Thank you to Danny and Vinny as well in the background. We'll see you on the next one.